Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. White supremacy has no principles. Not really. All it has is moral relativism and situational ethics. Now, moral relativism is when they say, other people had slavery, other people had oppressed groups in their society, so why are you saying that white people in the US did anything wrong? Other people did it too. That's moral relativism. Situational ethics is when what you call right and wrong is determined by whatever is to your advantage. Abraham Lincoln declared numerous times that he was against abolishing slavery. He said that right up until he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Afterwards, he said it was necessary to get rid of slavery in order to preserve the Union. Lincoln had no moral problem with slavery until the Southern plantation owners used their slave money to wage a war against them. Then suddenly Lincoln discovered religion. I think it was Mr. Harvey, i.e. Your World, who has said for a long time now that this country was founded by thieves, slaves, and opportunists. Now, the thieves part is self-explanatory enough, but understand the only difference between a thief and an opportunist is that the thief got to the loot first, while the opportunist comes right up behind him looking to see if there's anything he can scavenge. About the only people in this equation who are not the bad guys are the slaves. This leaves the thieves and the opportunists with a huge political problem that they can't solve, at least not on their own. In order to have legitimacy, you must also be, or at least appear to be, moral. That what you're doing is rooted in essential human decency. Problem is that by its very definition, a thief is not moral. So the administrators and beneficiaries of white supremacy can't claim anything that they do is decent. The thief tries to lie and deny that he kicked in the front door to your house and stole your belongings, or as we've seen with the dominant society in the US, the beneficiaries of white privilege, they claim that they did it, but they had a good reason for it, and there have been other people who have robbed other folks' houses, so nobody should be calling them out on it. But the same moral failing goes for the opportunists too. The opportunist tries to claim that he didn't kick in the front door to your house, though he did come in after he saw the thief run off with your TV and your computer. And the opportunist, he didn't steal your couch and your stereo, though he did make off with your fine china and your microwave. And the opportunist will be the first one to tell you that just because you don't have your dishes or your microwave, well, that's a failing on your part. You just didn't work hard enough for it, that's all. By the way, to continue our larcenous analogy a step further, the biggest group of opportunists in the criminal arena are the fences, the individuals who sell the stolen merchandise. Sure, they don't break into people's houses or rip off people's cars, but they'll gladly do business with anyone who does. Now, what the opportunist will try to do is to cloak himself in the innocence of the third party, whomever that working class individual is who's getting ripped off. The opportunist will try to claim that, why, I'm no different than this guy. You certainly can't compare me to the thieves. You see, this is why establishing our identity for ourselves, one that is separate and distinct from the fraudulent trick bag labels of people of color or minorities, is so important. As Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, we are a totally unobligated people. And that's unique, especially in this country, because everyone else who came here, including the black immigrants, came here to take advantage of the situation. A unique economic situation created by our forced labor. We've been attacked and abused by the very immigrants who we have helped in our community. We patronize their stores, buy their products, we speak up for them when they're mistreated, but they never patronize our stores or buy our products. And they make it a point to teach their children that they're better than us and to stay away from black people because... Yet, when there's something they want, they suddenly want to refer to our history, our struggle, compare themselves to us, the very people who they have spat upon and who they've denigrated, and say, we don't want anything to do with you. We're not like you. Stop whining about racism. There's nothing holding you back. Why? We're the proof of it. And yet when white supremacy's got its foot up their behinds, when they get their wake-up call, all of a sudden they can't wait to try to compare themselves to us. Why, they're no different than we are. There's that situational ethics that I was telling you about. And the part that the opportunist plays in all this is one of white supremacy's classic tactics, taking both sides of the conversation. Thank you, Neely Fuller. Because by lumping us in with these non-white groups who abuse and discriminate against us, white supremacy's simultaneously given the government cover to ignore us with the lie that our concerns are no different than these other immigrant groups. while at the same time taking a group who white supremacy has already provided tangibles for and giving them even more. Because now there's a minority group who the dominant society doesn't owe the same historical debt to, whose political demands are not a threat to the dominant society, and whom, when it's time to break these tools, they won't be able to make the same claims that we do because these very immigrants worked with the dominant society to oppress us. And they also have said countless times that they've done just fine in America, so black people have no excuse. All black people's grievances were so long ago, etc. When the time comes, white supremacy will throw these immigrants' words right back in their faces. So when the immigrants try to say that they were mistreated in the past, white supremacy will remind them that they declared that was in the past and is hence irrelevant. After all, they'd made it. So whatever happens to them now isn't discrimination at all. Why, it's market forces, or it's just a tragic confluence of events, but whatever it is, it ain't white supremacy. There's no honor among thieves. But when the burglar and the fence who sells his goods for him get together, they realize that they have a common vulnerability, and hence they got something that they both stand to lose. With the rising demands of black empowerment, and with more and more young black people rejecting the white supremacist-originated labels such as minority or people of color, we see black people are beginning to strengthen and purify our political focus. We're closing all the rhetorical doors that the white supremacists had used. We're not allowing our interests to be amalgamated or diluted by lumping us in with anyone else. And since our demands are the only ones that threaten white supremacy, the bad guys are on high alert, as are the opportunists who have been working hand in hand with them. We are seeing this push to start giving non-citizens the right to vote, at least at the local level. Now, it started off in the blue states, though we got some purple states, such as Maine and Illinois, that are starting to flirt with this. San Francisco allows non-citizens to vote in local and school board elections. Massachusetts jumped on board. And Illinois, that means Chicago, is trying to get the same thing done there. Now, the loophole that the Democrats in these cities are trying to use is that the laws in their states don't explicitly say that non-citizens cannot vote. Their state laws simply say you have to be over the age of 18. So as far as they're concerned, well, that means anyone can vote, even non-citizens. Federal elections, however, require that you be a citizen, at least for now. The states are an incubator for national policy. The states are where crackpot ideas get enacted into law, and the politicians sit back and see if the voters will revolt or not. The argument that's being used, and we see this mostly by activists whose origins are from south of the border, is that the non-citizens have been in the U.S. for a while now, and it would be taxation without representation to not let them vote. By the way, nowhere do any of these activists ever mention that the reason these people aren't citizens is because they broke into the country to begin with. That seems to never come up in the conversation. Now, there will be the typical predictable political jockeying for position by both parties, but don't be fooled. Republicans see the political advantages of allowing this just like the Democrats do. What we're seeing right now between the two major parties on this issue is an argument about how to best do it, so as to dilute, if not outright destroy, black people's voting power before we put any more pressure on the system. That's why New York's Mayor de Blasio didn't sign New York City's non-citizen voter law while he was in office. He left office without signing it. He left it up to NYPD officer Eric Adams to do it. Now, Adams, being the liar that he is, he told this fairy tale about how he was hesitant at first because New York City's non-citizen voting law would allow illegals to vote after only being in the country for 30 days. Imagine that. You go to New York City, why, you can have the right to vote in only 30 days. You ain't got to be legal, you just have to be here. And Eric Adams, he's getting out there with that buck-tooth grin of his. I mean, this dude, he's basically a pair of teeth with eyeballs on top. And this buck-dancing moron, he's just grinning to beat the band about how great this all is. Now keep in mind, this is the same New York City who told black people that they can't do anything about qualified immunity. Oh, well, we can't do anything about all these cops who are racially profiling. There's just so much red tape, you see. Getting anything through City Hall is so complicated, so difficult, you see. There's just not enough support. Can't do reparations at the local level in New York City either, even though New York City is the home of Wall Street, the financial backbone of the world. But perhaps it's because New York is the home of Wall Street that they don't dare make reparations or rein in the thugs in blue. Though I do think there's something that needs to be noted about this whole thing in New York City. New York City is gentrifying. The illegals from south of the border, they're going to be priced out. So in the long term, this won't be some big problem for the investor class. You know, the Mike Bloombergs and his kind. What this is meant to do is to be a foghorn, announcing to the whole nation, cities and states, that this is the final solution to the Negro question. You got some pesky black folks who are putting pressure on you about tangibles and reparations and undoing the racial hierarchy. Well, look, just go ahead and do the nuclear option. More than a few of them have now cottoned onto the fact that they're not going to be able to just have a smooth transition away from black folks and our interests, that this is not going to be going as quietly and smoothly as they like, so they just decided, hell, just hit the gas and let the chips fall where they may. This is a move of desperation. When the Democrats talk about voting rights, they're not talking about black people, folks. But they desperately want black people to allow ourselves to be the face of this sham. You know, the same way that Bill Clinton tried to claim that it was black preachers who wanted him to sign the '94 crime bill. Why? He didn't want to do it, but those black preachers, they had so much influence and he just couldn't say no. Yeah, anonymous black preachers. He can't tell you who the names of these black preachers are, but take his word for it, it totally happened. It's like what I've said, if black people want to vote, and I mean for real want to vote, then there's nothing that racist Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott or any other tin-horn sawed-off white supremacist can do to stop us. We want to bums rush the doors. We're getting in. Because here's the thing, black people have been voting all these decades, at least since the 60s, and what do we have to show for all of this uninterrupted voting? For all of this unobstructed voting, what do we got to show for it from either party? This is about trying to shame or coerce or maneuver black people into backing something that doesn't benefit us at all. It has nothing to do with us. This is about getting us to lend our good offices and our history to what is nothing more than a political measure geared towards wiping out our political influence. Immigration has always been used as a demographic counterlever to the black community in this country. And this maneuver of giving illegal aliens the ability to vote locally, that's meant to be the electoral equivalent of the same thing. You see, as more and more black folks are starting to say, hey, forget about these federal elections, we should be focusing on voting locally where we can have the most impact. That's where these racist DAs and these corrupt judges and these city council people who refuse to do anything about the race soldiers killing us or refuse to keep black businesses from being persecuted by these zoning boards and such, that's happening at the local level. And as black people are starting to say, we're going to be focusing on the local level, then here they come saying, oh, this is a good time to let those illegal aliens all have the right to vote. This is the right time to do it. Yeah, as soon as black folks say we're going to be focusing on local elections, now we need to make sure that all those illegal aliens are cleared to vote locally. We've made it clear that tangibles must be on the table to get our vote. So now the race is on to give non-citizens the vote at the local level, so at least these mayors and city council members and judges and sheriffs, they won't be pressured to do anything concrete because they'll have a new constituency that they can go to. Don't be surprised when you see states who decide to give this a try, including some of the red ones. The Republicans, that is the right wing, they want illegal immigration because it gives their corporate donors cheap labor. Democrats want it because it enables them to have a new or at least a wider voter base so that they're not vulnerable to black people's political demands. They need to have options. We need some Biden Republicans. We need some non-citizens, something other than black people. Both parties want illegal immigration because it allows them to dilute black people's political strength, and it gives them a rhetorical shield to hide behind and claim that, why, we're too busy taking care of all these other people to do anything for black folks. You got people coming from countries that practice rampant, vicious anti-black racism. And those are the ones getting put at the front of the line. Those are the main ones who they're tripping over their shoelaces and saying, we need them voting locally. This way, the racial status quo will be preserved. So this whole thing with giving non-citizens the ability to vote locally, this is just the Democrats and the Republicans, by the way, too, proving that the problem for black people's policies and interests being enacted has never been political opposition. Why, they can go ahead and make sure that there's things for people who aren't even citizens. They can make that a priority. People who don't even have the ability to vote for them. So what does that tell you? This has never been about the votes. It's been about what those voters are demanding. White supremacy can best be broken down into 3 unique phases. Phase 1 was the invasion phase, what they call exploration. They start staking out the areas that they intend to take over. And when you go to these places, make sure you bring your guns because you're going to need them for Phase 2. Phase 2 being the imperialism phase. We're going to be putting these new places that we go to, we're going to be placing them under European control. And through force of arms, the European would put in place a racial hierarchy, which would basically be the ethnic equivalent of the class hierarchy that they had in their home countries. That's what had been going on with White Supremacy 2.0. Right now, we're seeing White Supremacy 3.0, which is to freeze the world the way that it is so that the European maintains the position with which he emerged from colonialism. Freeze that racial hierarchy in place. Make sure that it does not move, does not change, but the problem is black people have never accepted it. Black people keep agitating against it. And since we are the backs upon whom white supremacy stands, when we stand up, they fall. They know this. So they're going to need to try to have themselves some sort of shock absorber. They're going to need to have something to hopefully take the place of all these black folks who are no longer going to be able to be controlled, and they're no longer going to be able to stand on our backs. They're going to have somebody there. So understand the game that's going on. This is not happening because the Democrats are trying to do black folks any favors. Black people have told them exactly what it is that we demand. The Democrats have made it clear we're not doing any of that. You name anything that black people have demanded that the Democrats have done. What the hell's happened under Jim Crow Joe that black people have demanded? That's actually happened. Hey, whatever happened to the Lift Every Voice plan? Stupid as that was, didn't happen. Hey, whatever happened to that police oversight commission at the presidential level? Biden said, hand it to the Congress. And Congress said, we ain't got time for it. Yeah, everything black people have said to do, they've said, we don't have time. Oh, but they do have time for Juneteenth. That's the reason why when it came to my Martin Luther King, the real Martin Luther King video that I did, I started off by pointing out that Dr. King himself said integrating lunch counters and the right to vote being established, these things didn't cost white supremacy anything. And guess what? Juneteenth as a national holiday, they could get that for free too. It doesn't cost them anything. As Dr. John Henry Clark said, do not ever make a demand of white supremacy that does not require them to give up their power. Because those are the only demands that are worthwhile. Anything else is a waste of time. So this is more the Democrats doing their old bait and switch. Claim that they're doing something for black people. Oh, there's a threat to black people. Well, funny how black people aren't the ones running around with our hair on fire. Well, you should be if only you knew the threat. We know the threat full well. We're looking at it. It's the very clowns who have tried to claim that they're on our side. All the while they've done nothing for us, though they've done plenty against us. So we see through the scam. We know what the long game is here. The best way to destroy someone who you don't like is to get them to help you do it. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Erica Yates, Wesley Monroe, Dedrea Carter, Chaz, and John Harvin. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.